I can kick off. So
Great.
this bipolar cast exploring bipolar and different treatments and different ways we cope and stigma and all these things. So we have Wim on, who apparently I've heard you tried keto for bipolar and you had some good success with that. If you want, you could just introduce yourself, what you did, the diet, how it was for you, your experience with it, etc., your illness.
So I'll mention Wim. I spoke to Wim once before, and he's got an amazing story with helping other people reverse their diabetes with keto. So he was showing me some graphs of like blood sugar just plummeting, time after time with his clients, and he's been doing scientific presentations, and he runs a business. He's an entrepreneur, and doing lots of health. So you doing keto and getting better yourself, you then spread that benefit to loads of other people in the Netherlands, and he's got a whole movement in the Netherlands that are we're seeing blood sugars dropping, insulin dropping, people having remission of symptoms of depression, people. So it's super exciting stuff and very inspiring. What could you tell us, what your story is with finding keto and low carb and fasting approaches to mental health?
I think I will tell you a long story.
Okay.
Okay. It started, I will go way back. Excuse me my English, I'm Dutch. I'm not very fluent in English, but I will try. When I was a young boy at school, I was a very adventurous boy. I was very smart, but maybe too smart. Nowadays, we would call it, it's a boy with ADHD. But that didn't exist in my youth. There was no ADHD, just busy boys. I could study very well, but I decided to quit school. I didn't like it, and I went working, and earning money was much more interesting than being in school, going out in the bars, seeing my friends. Then when I was 20, I got a little bit fed up, and I went to the army as a how you call it, for it's not as a professional, but as everybody has to go in the army when you're young. So I went to Lebanon to be with the Peace Force, Unified Peace Force in Lebanon, and it was a very exciting because you are the boy with ADHD. In the military, they love this kind of boys because we can look everywhere at the same time. We like a little bit adventurous, and I had a good time there. A lot of shooting, but also I was post commander, and I liked it, and I signed a little bit more because you do something that's good, you bring peace, but also there's you see hey, you are there, whereas for 3,000 years war, and you get very smart, very young. And when I got back, I felt a little bit, I missed the war. You became what we call a thrill-seeking junkie. So you needed to find this drug, adrenaline. I don't know how to call it, the anxiety drug, and you needed it, and you wanted it, and you went to look for it in other ways, and that gave you, you go into the nightlife, you do very adventurous things, and also you try all kinds of forbidden stuff, especially for my ADHD, smoking hashish was a medication, and some other things. I've never been a junkie, but I liked it, and also going out, and that led to one day I had a girlfriend, and a very long relation, and it went broke, and I had a very spiritual movement when I was lovesick, and then I started to, it was a very deep experience, and I stopped sleeping, and I thought I can hear spiritual things, and seeing Jesus and all these kind of stuff. And then the guy said, you should see a psychiater, how you call it, a shrink.
Psychiatrist, yeah.
And the guy, and I say, yeah, I hear voices. Where do you hear them? Yeah, I hear it in the music. There's in the text of the music, and there's a message there. John Lennon, Imagine, and all these kind of. Yeah, the guy say, okay. He put me in a gummy shape, in a isolation, and I didn't talk with him for half an hour, and I went in separation, and he gave me Haldol. He put me for 30 days in a room, and also got a judge with him so that he could keep me there. And it was a very, very frightening experience. It was, I felt raped. I really felt that this was what he was doing. And also I got on, they gave me Haldol. And I went to sit like this, and I couldn't speak anymore. And I felt really, everything hurt. And before that, I was very drunk. I didn't sleep at night. I was very busy. It goes from HDAD, it's 120. You go to manic, 140, and you can go to 180. You go psychotic. Okay. So after that time, I really lost my friends. You lose your face because I was in a kind of, I got very depressed. Because I used up all my energy. I needed 1 year just, and I really was depressed. I lost my house, lost my wife, lost everything. You get depressed, and I didn't want to live anymore. I was really depressed. Tried almost to suicide, but I couldn't do it. But I came back. I was 27, and 2 years later, the next one came. It was in the time with Salman Rushdie. And I say, but I don't go to a psychiatrist anymore. And so I did some crazy things that they put me in jail and had me put somewhere else. But I needed some rest too. After that, it went very well. I retook my life. I earned a lot of money, started businesses. I went to Morocco, had my own business, earned a lot of money, sold my company to a multinational, had a great job. Then I was 45, I think in 98, I felt again a little bit pressure. And then I say, I just need to go out of, how you call it, pickles. You don't want to have too much input. Yep. So you need some quiet. And I went with my wife to Mecca on a religious, on the Hajj. Yep. And there's also, I recovered there also, but I still had this thrill seeking, going to nightclubs, and I was becoming fatter and fatter. And when I was about 50, in 2000, I was 42, I got the diagnosis pre-diabetes and diabetes. And in 2006, I had another period of partying, house parties, working very hard in the week. And then every weekend it was house parties with everything that goes with house parties. So in 2006, I really collapsed and had some problems too, but I managed. And then I got depressed again and got a burnout, couldn't work anymore. Diabetes got worse, and I had to stop working. And I had to stay at home. They gave me some pension for military that I had. They saw that I had some problems. So I put myself in this room, in my loft. and started learning myself programming and sitting all nights, eating cookies and having diabetes, getting fatter, and I couldn't even take I was afraid to go in the streets. I went back. I became very solitary. Had no more friends. Yeah, luckily I had my son, who I could do a lot for him.
Yeah.
I went to him with sports and everything. That was my savior, more or less.
Yeah.
And my diabetes got worse and worse and worse. And in 2014, I had to start shooting insulin. Insulin didn't work, and my HbA1c was at 11%.
Wow.
That's way high. Then you have blood in your sugar, not sugar in your blood anymore. Okay, I had to shoot insulin, and that's heavy. If you have to start to inject yourself with insulin, that's a wake-up call. So I say I need to go to do some sports, and I needed to go to see a dietitian, but it didn't work out. I was 115 kilos when I started shooting insulin, and after a year I gained 10 kilos. I went to 125. Then one day at television I saw a guy named Robert Lustig. He's an American endocrinologist, and he made a video. He told about sugar, the bitter truth. Yeah. I said, okay, this sounds good. What this guy is telling, I will start Google him. Yeah. So I saw his video. It was already then in 2015. It was already 5 million views, and I say, okay, I cut the sugar and things, and it went a little bit better, but it didn't go as it should be. I studied a little bit more, and then I saw the book from Gary Taubes, Why We Get Fat. And in that book, he say, okay, why do we get fat? He said, it's not a problem only of calories in, calories out. It's also a problem about hormones, and especially insulin. And okay, insulin, when insulin is high, you go in fat storage, and I say, okay, then that's why we get fat, and etc., etc. I say, well, this makes sense. When I had to start shooting insulin, I gained 10 kilos. And then he explained, why does insulin raise? Yeah, insulin raises because of highly processed foods, and especially processed carbohydrates. So, okay, and I say, and I knew, because I had to calculate my insulin to the amount of carbohydrates. I say, well, this makes sense. This is what this guy, and then I looked a little bit further anymore in Google, because I found out I was totally not interested in this kind of stuff. I never interested myself for health or science about, I didn't care. Then I found another guy that's called Peter Attia. Peter Attia, he was also telling, he was swimming to Catalina Island, and he got fat even if he was sporting every day. And he was eating a good diet, but he went ketogenic. So I studied everything about him. And there was this other guy, Dominique D'Agostino, about the Navy SEALs. And then, okay, I said, I will do a ketogenic diet, just to lose weight and to try, because I wanted to lose some weight and to reverse. And I thought that might reverse my diabetes. But I went looking, my doctor didn't know about it. He said, you will get very sick, you will get a heart attack because you will start eating fat. And okay, I went all in on June 3, 2015. I will never forget that day, because that's the day of my new life. And nobody wanted to help me. I couldn't find anything in Dutch about ketogenic. Luckily, I can understand English very well. I don't speak it very well, but I understand it very well. And I say, okay, I have to watch out with my insulin. I will start measuring my blood very well, and I could stop using insulin in 2 days because my sugar didn't raise anymore. I say, wow. And I thought this was predicted. And then I started losing weight. And not a little bit. The first month, I lost 10 kilos. It went crazy. And I say, wow. But I was very strict. I did everything I put in my mouth. I registered with MyFitnessPal, and I registered everything. And there came other things as well. I started to getting some more energy. So I start walking. And I say, okay, if I walk a little bit more, I can eat a little bit more, because I did a calorie restricted ketogenic diet. So I counted my calories and I counted my carbs. And I was really into the traditional ketogenic diet, 80%, 75-80% fat, 15% 20-15 protein, and 5% carbs, no more than 30 grams. But in hindsight, because I was also cutting 500 calories, my fat was higher because I was eating also my body fat. So I didn't even have my food intake. And in that time, also there was this Siegfried, about cancer and metabolic disease and Warburg effect. And he told me, you should try to get your ketones higher than your sugar. So I went for it, because I measured my ketones. I bought a ketone meter, and I have still left the picture. My sugar was in millimolars 4.1, and my ketones were 4.6. So I was really in the high ketogenic diet. And what I noticed also, I started walking and I started changing my mood. And also, because that was very important, my day and night rhythm started to change. I could sleep again. And in the morning, I was, in the evening, I was tired. I was walking more and I started sporting. So in 5 months, I lost 40 kilos. I completely reversed my diabetes, and I say, well, this is a miracle, because in that time, diabetes was irreversible. Roy Taylor hadn't done his study yet. I say, I was here sitting on I will start in Facebook, and I will tell it everybody. This is my new mission as a veteran. So now I have something to live for. I started a blog, and then I met the first doctor I met, and he just came back from South Africa. He was a sports doctor. He wanted to see Tim Noakes, and he also said, "Hey, there's something happening here." And he did a small village in Holland called Leende. He did the same with food and with the real meal revolution. A year later, I met Professor Hanno Peil. He's a Dutch diabetologist, one of the leading professors here in the Netherlands about lifestyle. And they started Lifestyle for Health. It's about lifestyle as medicine. And I started my foundation. My foundation name is Je leeft als medicijn, Lifestyle as Medicine. And I started to help people doing the same I did. I started coaching them, but we found out also, we focused on diabetes, but it's also working for obesitas. But then also we saw it works also for type 1 diabetes. Yeah, okay, type 1, because then you get the Bernstein method. It's almost the same. But people with there were people also who were recovering from arthritis. We saw people with Crohn's disease, with IBD. We saw people with all kinds of diseases, and also people with bipolar disease. And we have now also a group with migraine, the severe headaches. And I say, yeah, I was bipolar as well. My bipolar, where is God? And then I realized in hindsight, I was completely cured, but I didn't notice. I didn't never done it for my bipolar, and also this is. Then I thought, what was the medication I had? They had me sometimes on Ritalin, sometimes on an antidepressant, but most of the time I was on an anticonvulsant, on Dipakine. I say, yeah, I know this. This is used for epileptic. I know ketogenic is for epileptic, and now we see, hey, this ketones, it's working in your brain. It's doing something in your brain. It's HDAC inhibitor. I started also doing a course on mitochondrial functions, and I went learn to Krebs cycle, and I saw everything, and I say, okay, I have, and then there came a woman in my foundation. In my foundation, also, she said, I have cured my bipolar disease. I say, yeah, but the problem is, I was afraid to talk about it because I have a big foundation. I have 1,000 members. I have you don't want, you don't, yeah, it's still, you can better, sometimes when you're depressed, I prefer I had a cancer. You can imagine that, but being depressed, or it's very heavy disease, and I know now. Am I cured? I don't think so. I think, first of all, I am cured. Yes, I'm not sick anymore. But what is a bipolar disease? I think it's also in your character. It's something that's inside you. You see artists like him. You see a lot of intelligent people. They have something, and we found out. Yeah, it's a gift which you have to learn to handle. But we should watch out for that. We have. So what I feel now, I am a bipolar by day. That means when I wake up in the morning, I'm more or less manic. I'm full of energy, and I wanted to. I can do everything. I am creative. And then in the evening, I get depressed. I'm tired. I cannot write a blog anymore. I have no more inspiration. I go to sleep at 9 o'clock, and in the morning I wake up again. And it's going now. It has come back in its natural 24 cycle of in the morning having energy, and in the evening being, and that's what you need.
So you mean, in a sense, this is like a normal way to be compared to how it was before, where you were just constantly having depression and mania? Is this a more normal kind of like balance you feel?
I feel just, I'm not manic in the morning. I can conquer the world. I feel full of energy. I can do my stuff. I write, and I can do a lot of work in the morning, and then in the evening, I'm tired. I'm back in this. This is a normal how you should be.
It is absolutely fascinating what you're saying, because I mean, there's so many things like, wow, this is really interesting, because there's so many aspects to it: the insulin resistance, the circadian rhythm, the diet, the diabetes. These are all things that are not traditionally understood to be part of bipolar disorder. But you said that when you went on a keto diet or fasting and low carb, your circadian rhythm went back to normal. There's no kind of current paradigm for understanding how that can happen, but this is what you experienced. Was your circadian rhythm returned to normal?
And it was a normal. I look now with hindsight, I didn't want my circadian rhythm to be, but I was just tired in the evening, and then when I go earlier in the bed, I race early. But also I had this CGM, and then I analyze this data, and you see at 3. Because we have now we have developed a lifestyle program. We have a 3 systems. We have food. We have exercise. We have the biorhythm, circadian rhythm. We have stress management, and we have relations, love, and purpose in your life. These 5 pillars we work on.
Fantastic.
Wim, this is an amazing story. Have you noticed changes in your cognition or your stress level or other things like that?
Yes, my cognition went way up. Way up. Everything went. I'm smarter. It's like, especially with, and I see that with a lot of people with diabetes. It's a brain fog who goes away, and you see those people getting. Oh, you see that. I don't see this once. I see that every time. We do this now with thousands of people. Do you feel better? Yeah, I'm more lucky. So yeah, I feel sharper. I feel more clear. And also, I don't need any drinks or drugs. I don't need. I'm happy. I'm fine. I think the ketones. It's like it's more or less a drug. It's a drug of its own. Yeah.
Is fascinating because the diabetes aspect to it. So me and Matt didn't necessarily have diabetes before we were diagnosed. I certainly had high blood sugar, but it's funny how we found it in different ways, because I did it by accident. I was I just wanted to lose weight to lose weight basically, and then the mood benefits came later on. And then Matt was looking at it from, I think it's because you're researching Dr. Chris Palmer's work and getting in touch with him, right?
Well, I was working with Dr. Palmer, and I came across the diet as a potential treatment, and then I was hesitant, but when I tried it, miraculous for mood stabilization.
But in a funny way, it's almost, we were doing an interview with Matt on the last episode, and it was almost like his journey was like discipline, like applying his discipline in all the different areas of his life to get better, and then applying that to keto. And you were applying this like intellectual thinking with your entrepreneurship and your drive to do things, and you were figuring it out. You were looking into insulin, you're looking into glucose, and then I stumbled on it completely by accident, just by trying to lose weight. But it's funny how we've come from three different directions.
I decided this year had to come out of the closet for my bipolar, and I decided to go give this talk for the psychiatrists, because I don't like those people. And very funny, my own psychiatrist was sitting in the class.
It's that's amazing.
But then I went researching, and then I found the work of Dr. Palmer. And on the site of Dr. Palmer, I saw your video, and then I went to look at this video, and it gave me chicken bumps. I say, wow, what this guy is saying, this is 100, this is how it is. Your video, I say, wow, this guy is telling, this is it. I'm sure this is everything what you're saying there, it's head on. It's exactly what I studied, what I experienced. Also with the glutamate, everything was spot on.
Well, I mean, this is why we're doing this podcast, is to try and raise the understanding of that there's a real scientific basis. So there's lots of people experiencing this, but there's also a real scientific basis building for why this might be the case. And, in sort of, when we're doing keto, or ketones are coming up, and it's like an alternate fuel source for the brain. When the brain can't burn glucose effectively, ketones are like this almost backup alternate fuel source we can use. And we were talking about this last week as well, that in a certain range of ketones, very similar to a certain range in epilepsy, you see mood stabilization, much like you see seizure reduction in epilepsy. So there's something this is doing to the brain that's really interesting. And you were saying, Matt, like your ketones are generally like 2, 3, 4 level.
It's interesting. I've been experimenting with lower levels and actually have had very good, even closer to 1 or 1 to 1.5. But another question I have for Wim, just for the people out there who do have bipolar disorder, who are struggling with it, what are some of the symptoms that you had that were resolved when you went on the diet?
It's not. You are not every day sick. You have these episodes. I don't know if you can be manic for. You go. You have. I need to be at. If a normal guy is 100%, a normal. You're a normal person. I think as somebody with ADHD, because you get a lot of stamps. I had you get borderline, you had ADHD, you get a lot of diagnoses. I didn't get the diagnosis right away. Even PTSD, all those, it depends. So they start putting stickers on you. Then when I'm normal, when I'm good, I'm at 120 because that's me. I need to be 120 because I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a busy guy. I like. I think that's just my character.
Yeah.
And I think I like to work now. I invent a lot of things, but I don't finish my things. Normally I should have people like, they call it autistic. I should have 5 friends autistic who can finish my jobs. Then I will, so we should make a team. So that's there where I'm good. But as soon as I go over 120, there's in between 120 and 140, you get a little bit, you start being manic. Yeah. And then at 140, you start to be, you start seeing things. You become, you get very big, and you start being spiritual sensitive.
So you notice, you notice a mood elevation at that stage.
What?
Yeah, you notice a sort of elevated feeling or mood at that stage. Because
also I think there's a spiritual. There's also, then you get a lot of inspiration.
Yep.
But you have to be then you start into being in the red zone.
Yeah.
You have to learn. I had to learn. It took me 40 years to learn to be in that zone.
Yeah.
And if you go over this zone and you start listening to those voices and going really, and then you go, and especially if it's in combination with drugs, will take you even higher. Especially hashish, you can, especially with the weed you have in the Netherlands, you might become psychotic.
So, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I also had marijuana as a catalyst for psychosis, and then consistently throughout my illness.
Yeah.
And I noticed it. Did you notice any other drugs or lifestyle factors or anything else that was dysregulating for you, like your sleep or whatever?
I think I tested them all, but I think the marijuana was the most psychotic, and especially this marijuana they make in the Netherlands now. It's really hard drugs. I really advise everybody who has bipolar, don't use it. But it was my ADHD medication. It made me quiet, but it made me psychotic. Lifestyle is also about stopping drugs.
I think what you're describing is really common as well with bipolar, is that there is a strong correlation, and there's good studies on this showing that there is a increased creativity and intelligence that can come with bipolar. Not necessarily, but the two often do come together in some way. And it's just remarkable hearing your story, how you've been an entrepreneur and you've launched really successful businesses, and you've done so much and started this movement and this foundation. And it's funny because most people don't have the capacity to do things like that, but yet you've been struggling with this really severe illness, and you're still having this incredible output into the world, which is something really remarkable about bipolar people, is that they're able to provide this tremendous benefit to society, but their internal journey is a terrible struggle. And even speaking, even speaking with you now, it's clear that you've mastered your own way of that, and you found your way through it and found control of it. So what advice would you give to someone who is not in control of the illness, and they're feeling like, I want to start a business, or I want to do something successful, I want to do what Wim did and get in control of this? What would you advise them if they're in their 20s and they're really struggling with it?
Lifestyle as medicine. Because for instance, when I was talking with the 30 psychiatrists, nobody knew this. I asked all of them, and also I asked the professor who is a specialist in metabolic disease. I said, did you know there is a metabolic brain dysfunction linked to metabolic dysfunction? They didn't know it. The only psychiatrists who say, maybe the vegetarian diet might be good for people with, no way. So that was the only thing they knew that they exist. But I think, first of all, I was not crazy. I couldn't handle the inputs. There was too much. That came too much in, and it went that it couldn't stop. So when you're young and you have this, and especially the one I have, the bipolar type 1, you need to switch off. So as soon as you go, for me, it's very clear. If you stop sleeping, you should sleep 6 to 8 hours every day. If you start sleeping 4 hours or 3 hours, go see your doctor right away.
Yeah.
And then the doctor should not give you pills, because he will kill you with the pills. Yeah. And he should put you, and what they should do, I'm a little bit crazy here. We should go to have a place in nowhere, in the middle of nowhere. We take old veterans to walk with them who are a little bit with PTSD. And then we put those people with diabetes and who are fat, and we will, instead of cutting their stomach open, we will put them there. And then also the bipolar people can go there, but maybe they have to go sit a little bit in the back.
Well, Wim.
And so they have to sit in a forest, no telephone, no internet, just calm down.
I have a follow-up question. Well, I think this is an interesting idea. Is there a place for medication in treating bipolar? If so, what's the place? What are the circumstances, in your opinion?
I don't think it's necessary. I think it's, but you should, it depends. If you have this place where you can put him without too much input, so in a prickle arm, so no internet, no television, just get him in calm.
Yeah.
But it will take 3-4 weeks maybe. Let him be creative, let him paint, let him write his poems, let him write on the walls. That's what they do. They write, they see things. Put them like the Greeks did, put them in Delphi, make them oracles.
So yeah, I mean, you're describing how, people with bipolar have this unique way where they have lots of energy and creativity and inspiration, but they also have this depressive element. And if it can be harnessed in the right way, like you're saying, you can really have a tremendous benefit to society. And there's actually Bridgewater, which is a large investment company in America, are employing bipolar people specifically. And this is because the director of that company's son had bipolar. He's now a filmmaker that makes films about this, and he saw the benefit of his creativity, and he said, in this company I want to employ people that have this kind of creative thinking. So I mean, just so we saw this insulin resistance, and you had diabetes, and you had this metabolic issues. How do you see the mitochondrial function playing into that? How did you see this as related to your diabetes and insulin resistance? Did you see that playing a role?
Yeah, I think it's diabetes and obesity. It's a question of energy toxicity. I think your energy is becoming toxic, and that's what your mitochondria, who are handling this energy, they don't handle the energy anymore. Yeah. So you get a lot of free radicals, you get a low level of inflammation, and you cannot, even if you eat, your brain doesn't get the energy it needs. Yeah. And you start eating more and more and more, because that's the only way you can get this energy, but you cannot get this energy out of it. And the only what you get fat, and you get fatty liver, you go sicker, but your brain still needs this energy to do its job. And then you get all those free radicals, and you get this inflammation in your brain, insulin resistance in your brain. It's an insulin resistance, and I see also the link with Alzheimer, ALS. It's much more.
It's remarkable because across all these different neurodegenerative conditions, when you see MRI scans, you see PET scans, you're seeing that there's, PET scans particularly, you're seeing reduced glucose metabolism. So glucose is just not being burned effectively in the brain in a lot of these neurodegenerative conditions. And even in basic normal diabetes, you see this diabetic neuropathy where the neurons are degrading over time. So it's not controversial to think that, insulin resistance could contribute to neurons in the brain becoming damaged, but it's just been been completely overlooked for some reason in bipolar research. It's not been seen as a kind of mainstream narrative, apart from, you know, people like Cynthia Calkin and Chris Palmer are starting to talk about this. But this is something that's been totally kind of underappreciated. And you did a course at Harvard to learn more about this. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did the TEDx at Harvard, a very good course about mitochondria. Yeah, I saw it right away. This is a mitochondrial disease. It all fell into place. And when you told me, when I saw your video, I said, yeah, that's it. I completely 100% agree with what you're saying. And I don't think I don't believe, for me, I don't believe that that diabetes is an illness. I think it's all, how we call it now in Dutch, a metabolic dysfunction. You start having a little bit raise of insulin, and then you get all the symptoms. That might be bipolar, that might be depression, that might be burnout, that might be cancer, that might be diabetes, that might be heart disease, that might be inflammatory bowel disease, even type 1 diabetes, anti-allergy, there is rheumatism. I think it all has the same root cause, this obesogenic, this food which we are eating is crap. And we have too much stress. The way we made our society, we made a sick society.
Wim, I agree with you. And the unfortunate truth is that if you go to a psychiatrist for depression, whatever, bipolar, the psychiatrist won't know anything about diet. They won't give you a dietary recommendation, unfortunately. Most likely, how do you think we can start to change the paradigm and start to help doctors to learn that the diet is pretty much essential? And what are the steps we can do to change that?
Now, what we are doing now, it's a grassroots movement. It's people like us who will tell their doctor. We will add, that's what we did also with diabetes. That was also a chronic disease. So we will have people like us who will start saying, and we want this, and we need this. And I started now Facebook groups, and we started helping people and getting more NS1 evidence. But there are also there are doctors now in the Holland. There are also some psychiatrists who are seeing that lifestyle might be the clue, because if we do nothing, how many people are on antidepressant now? And it's also if you see this STEM talk, you see there is a guy in the STEM talk who is talking about research in the pharmaceutical industry for this kind of medication. There's a lot of things that's not really, there's a lot of money into this kind of medication. Huh?
I think it's why it's so important that people like you are talking about this, because there's very little, if you're a sort of researcher or someone interested in this, it's not like you're going to go to a pharma company and they're going to fund a ketogenic diet. Yeah, it's very difficult to, you know, so people talking about it like this is all the more important because we're bringing this out into the open and we're making sure people are hearing about this message. And, you know, there's 3 of us at the moment, but maybe one day we'll be on a call with several hundred, because there's certainly online you can find hundreds of reports. If you just Google bipolar disorder ketogenic diet, there's people all over the world talking about remission of symptoms, significant improvements, and now there's case studies and there's trials happening. So it will gradually start to come out, but it's just going to take people being brave like yourself and talking about it and saying this is what happened with me. And I think that's fantastic.
And if also the way we do evidence-based medicine, how can we do a double control trial? How can we say this guy is going on to ketogenic diet and this one is not? How can we randomize this? So there needs to be a new way of doing science on this, because we cannot. How can we randomize on this? How can we do? And who will fund it? Who will? Now I thought here you are going to do a study. Stanford is going to do a study, but it will come.
Do you want to say some more about these studies that are happening, Matt? Matt's heavily involved in the process of this, and we've been doing meetings about how to start looking at this and start studying it in a scientific way. Oh, I was saying, Matt, do you want to say something about that?
I don't know much about the studies. I mean, unfortunately, there's a dearth of information, traditional studies about how diet can interact with the bipolar illness and what it can do.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm informed to answer this, but we're the randomized trial, and we're going to see what the diet does, and if it can mediate symptoms. That's the goal, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't need any proof anymore.
yeah. So I mean, me and Matt were in a meeting where I was pitching this kind of ketogenic diet, not a randomized controlled trial on a small scale called a pilot study, and we're sort of figuring out how you would do this, and there are ways to randomize this and to control it, and to, there's very good sort of protocols in epilepsy for putting people on these diets, and you can find ketogenic diet clinics in almost everywhere in the world. We have one here in Edinburgh. And these can be repurposed to help people with mental health conditions if this is proven to be useful. So there's already infrastructure there for epilepsy. We know that this is having a really profound effect on the brain, so much so that if you, in the hospital over here in Edinburgh, my brother's a pediatrician there, and they'll have kids that come in with severe seizures, like they're like completely debilitated by seizures, and they'll put them on a ketogenic diet and they can return to normal life, and sometimes they're even cured where they don't have to go back on medication. And there's a whole foundation called the Charlie Foundation spreading the word about this, and the same thing is happening in bipolar to some extent, but it's just not reported in the scientific literature. So it will be really exciting when this becomes more prevalent. So through your work with the foundation and with helping people with diabetes and the kind of community you've created around this, do you see reports coming through like this with mental health improving with the low carb approaches and fasting and ketogenic diet?
We see now also we see very big results in migraine.
Yeah,
hundreds and hundreds of people are curing migraine. And I think also there's a link. There's a link there. Bipolar, not too, cases, but people don't know it, and the doctors they put them on medication, and if you are on an antipsychotic medication, you cannot do anything. You are completely you're like a zombie.
Wim, I wonder about adherence also when you're putting people on the diet. I mean, this is not an easy diet to adhere to. The carbohydrates are everywhere. I mean, they're everywhere, right? So is there any advice or recommendations you give to people who are maybe struggling with adherence to the diet or keeping up the discipline? There are things like that.
It takes a lot of discipline, and as we know, what he told about the epileptic clinics, because it might be that a normal ketogenic diet, what we do for diabetes, like the Virta way, is not strong enough for all of them. It might help some of them, but for some we even have to go higher. Maybe there's also something that we can do with exogenic keto supplementation. But then we don't need the keto salts, we need the keto esters. Because they are more effective, because I saw this, if there maybe there's something to do in as a kind of medication to supplement. MCT oil is also C6 or C8. That might to bump up those ketones a bit, I think. If you are looking where Dom D'Agostino is he's linked to Charlie Foundation. They are seeing it has to be, I think, very good. And what they do now, if you are psychotic, or if you are severe ill, or even how you call it, what Chris Palmer said, not only bipolar but the other one, schizophrenic. He's already saying schizophrenic and bipolar is the same. So those people are also hospitalized. So if you hospitalize them, you can feed them, but instead of feeding them drugs, feed them a ketogenic diet. So they have to, if you lock them up, then help them to adhere. It's not easy. And for the people who cannot adhere to the diet, we hope that they will find the best medication.
There's a couple of great things Chris Palmer brings up, which is that in initial treatment of schizophrenia and bipolar, they would do this thing called insulin shock therapy. So back in, I guess this was kind of in the 1970s sort of time, they were putting people on insulin, and they were literally giving them insulin until they went to sleep. And then they were seeing that this helped their symptoms get better. And this was like kind of deemed unethical because it's not a nice thing to go through. But you can see also in Russia, they were fasting people for a long time. They were just taking schizophrenic bipolar patients and fasting them and seeing them have remission and like significant improvements because they were going into ketosis. So there's a long kind of history of this that's kind of not recognized. Where do you see it going in the future? Do you think that this is going to be primarily a diet-based approach, or do you think, you know, from the stuff you've learned through metabolism and mitochondria and the Harvard studies, do you think it will be? Do you think pharma will come into this and try to develop new medications that can help with this kind of similar to diabetes? Metformin can improve insulin resistance. Do you think that will be part of the solution, or do you think it's just a lifestyle diet approach?
Maybe metformin, but it has also some influence on the mitochondria. And it is also an anti-inflammation.
Yeah.
It's not I think exonic ketones are very promising. But then you need it. You need a lot. You don't take a pill. You need a bottle.
Yeah.
You need at least 100 grams, and it's quite expensive. But you need a good dose. And I saw. I don't know if you've seen this video of Richard Veach.
Yeah.
Richard Veach with the guy from Bulletproof. He had a very good interview talking about. He worked with Prep Cycle. Very interesting stuff what he's saying, and he's doing it with ALS or with people with Alzheimer and with Parkinson. Yeah, I think, but he told also this is something you can even make from mice. You need it you cannot make it in a pharmaceutical environment. You need to make it like a food, because you need a lot of to make those ketone esters. Yeah.
Wim, do you see exogenous ketones as a consistent daily treatment to keep the ketone levels up, or as like an as needed? Like, say I slipped up and someone gave me a Coke or something, and my ketones dropped, and then I take them, and it basically saves me from my ketones dropping.
It might. I didn't do it because I had them high enough, but I think it can help you, like they do with people with children with epileptic. They give them MCTs, or even coconut oil also can raise a little bit. Also, you can get them right away in the liver. Yeah. And the bulletproof coffee might do the thing as well.
Yeah. There's so many. It's so interesting because there's so many things in your story that are really the whole story of this illness is insulin resistance, diabetes, epilepsy, the MCTols, exogenous ketones. These are all things pointing towards something, and it's not being kind of widely recognized. And so if you meet someone that has a bipolar or a metabolic illness, what's your first line approach for, like, let's try and make things better? You were saying you had a very quick improvement when you started on keto. Do you recommend a specific approach, like when you're starting out? What's your kind of feeling about how best to kind of help someone with this?
Yeah, it's I'm seeing some people with bipolar. As soon as they got psychotic, they get in the hands of and then they get controlled by their parents. They get really take your pills. As soon as they stop taking their pills, they will go locked away. Yeah. The problem, they cannot stop the pills anymore. And the pills also, they are very addictive. Yeah. You cannot stop with them right away. Yeah. And also it's very dangerous if you take somebody off. He might be dangerous. Yeah, it's dangerous. Yeah. So you're really playing with fire. So I think it's you need a doctor who's involved. Yeah, I don't think we should do this alone. Yeah, you need to try also who can. You need to have a good security plan, a good backup plan. I think you need your doctor not stopping you putting your pills, but I wouldn't advise people to do it on their own. I think you need good dietitian, a doctor with you, and even if you go, that you even can be locked up if you're getting really psychotic. I think this is too severe as an illness to just to play around with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wim, I wonder if, so I've spoke with Dr. Palmer about this before I went on the diet, but initially the first 2 to 4 weeks, there can be like a surge of a mood elevation when you're getting keto adapted. Did you experience anything like that when you went on the diet, or was it just smooth sailing?
No. What I experienced, because I also had my PTSD, and it was like waking up, and I was very aggressive. So, for instance, I started swimming. I couldn't sport, and then I started swimming. And if somebody was in my lane, I could hit him. So, I got this energy back, but it took me some time. And so I like a lot of frustration who was in me, who came out. And also, I become regularly psychotic now. But I don't call it. I'm now within. I'm doing some meditation. I'm doing some Sufism now, and I can see things. Sometimes I know I am a little bit up, and that's nice, and I love it, and I'm very grateful that I can have these moments that might be 5 minutes, 2 minutes, just going, bum, and going back. It gives me over. When I do this, I get chicken bumps.
I think
So you're saying you can, go ahead. You can have moments of almost little manic psychosis, but it's not the prolonged, horrible that it took.
I think it's an oracle of Delphi kind of thing. It's a gift. It's a gift that you can be you can raise behind your normal. We always use, they say we use 20% of our brain. And I think then you get, in a moment, you can use 30% in your brain. But if you keep this on forever, you get. But if it just for a few minutes, you call it inspiration. You can write poetry in this moment. Yeah. You get great ideas for even doing business is also a creative process. I think that when a poet writes a poem, or when a musician sees his music coming, or a writer sees his book, I hear a lot of writers, when they write a book, they say, it's already been written. I just took it out of the air. And I think now when I'm now into Sufism, and now everything falls for me in its place. And I see, because we all experience something with love. Everybody here has something. The music with when I had my first episode, my girlfriend broke up. So there's always something in a love story or a hurt. There is something there. There is something.
Well, what you're saying is fascinating, because there's the kind of the lived experience of bipolar is that when you have these sort of like hypomanic or manic episodes, there can be a lot of beauty and meaning and worth in those things. That there's an aspect to it that's difficult, but it doesn't exclude the fact that there could be great creative works that come out of states like this. And certainly if you look at the history of like Nobel laureate poets, there's a really good study on this by I think it was Kay Radisson Jameson. I need to check that, but she was studying how many Nobel laureate poets were bipolar, and if you look at the family trees, it just lights up like a Christmas tree. This is all people with bipolar, because they're accessing a state of mind that is difficult to access, and most other people would try nicotine or caffeine or all the things people have used to be creative. And you can even see Robert Burns here, which is one of our Scottish heroes. He describes like flights of inspiration that you could certainly interpret as hypomanic. But if you look through the history of like literature, art, music, science, there's bipolar people are quite overrepresented. in these fields. And so how do you, when you have inspiration, because you're an example of that, because you've used that to start businesses and to be successful and to be an entrepreneur and to also change the lives of thousands of other people that you're working with through the foundation. And so how do you harness that kind of energy when it appears into something positive? And has being on a ketogenic diet kind of brought that into control for you? Has it made a difference in how you respond to that?
Yeah, but I have to make sure I sleep enough.
Mm.
And I should not drink. My lifestyle is very strict. I go to bed at 9 o'clock. I wake up at 5 o'clock. I don't cheat. I sport. I run. I'm very strict in my lifestyle. I should not go too much to Armin van Buren anymore. And all.
Couple times.
Yeah,
Wim,
but
I have so much respect for the lifestyle I mean, that's amazing to do that consistently and obviously reaping the benefits of a stable mood. What was the process of going from partying and living this crazy life to this strict kind of formed lifestyle?
because you were partying and doing this because you was looking for something. You missed something. You thought the happiness was there with the ecstasy or with the music. And I still love trance music, and I still love music, and I still can enjoy. I still love my music. When I do my meditation, I still listen. I listen now also to the text of the music. It's very inspiring for me. So I still love, but I don't need the drugs anymore to get there. I make my own drugs. I think my ketones are my drugs.
That's amazing.
And it's a good drug. The side effects are very beneficial.
Yeah. And it certainly acts like a drug, in terms of like one of the funny things is that epilepsy and bipolar have the same medications, and ketogenic diet works for epilepsy, and it's now been so it's like you don't have to do too much math to figure out that there's something going on with that. It is like a medication in a sense.
Yeah, but also if you see people on how you call it in San Francisco, there, where all those smart people are sitting, Silicon Valley.
Yeah,
a lot of the managers, they are getting ketogenic because they are raising 10 points in IQ.
Really?
You see it, huh? And a lot of managers, they go ketogenic because they feel more energetic. You feel your IQ going up.
Yeah.
And if you look back. Because I believe very much in this paleo, living the way we did.
Yep.
If we are three hunters, we are hunting, and then a snowstorm comes and we don't have any food, and normally you would say, oh, your brain doesn't get sugar, you die. No, we developed the ketones to survive.
Yeah.
And what happens? Okay, we starve, we don't have food.
Yeah.
And we might die if we don't eat.
Yeah.
So what happens? The ketones come and you say, hey, 2 weeks ago, I saw there were some rabbits there. And then you get smarter so that you can hunt better.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you see happening. So if we are starving, we are getting in this in this state of ketogenesis, and then these ketones come, they are more efficient in your neurons and in your heart. It's proven. Yeah. And then you might get this extra boost of hunting, getting this energy. And I think that's the way we as a species survived. Yeah. If we would get sick and slow on starvation, we would have been extinct.
Mm.
Yeah, there's no question that incessant carbs was not necessary. I mean, just based on what you've said. I mean, the hunter-gatherers would go days without carbs, days without food. And how would you live? Like you said, the ketones and the fat would fuel your brain, burn the fat that's on your body.
Yeah, and also if you see in the food, and especially take the donut, there is no way that you find fat and carbs in one food.
Yeah,
and that doesn't exist. And especially if you take this fat, this omega-6, the raps, the canola,
Yeah.
This kind of industrial fat with those flour, and you take that together, you get it's poisonous. It gives you a sugar spike, and it gives you we are not used to eat this kind of food.
There's a fantastic
it's the nature. You can find sugar or you can find carbs. You can find fat and protein, but you will never find fat and carbs.
It's fascinating because there's a scientist called Schulman who was researching insulin resistance, and he thinks that insulin resistance was a protective thing in the past, because when there wasn't enough food, you would want to conserve your blood sugar for the central nervous system, for the brain. You would want to have a system that lets your blood sugar, raise and not get burned off in the muscles too quickly, because it's preserving it for the brain, and so it's a survival thing. But so if that's fine, if you're kind of in a Paleolithic times when there's not much food supply, but when you're in Tesco's or Walmart with Mars bars everywhere and Snickers, and the body just doesn't have a system to adapt to that system, and the insulin resistance then becomes a problem because it was trying to protect you, but when you have unlimited food supply, it becomes something that actually damages you. So you can see how this is what we're potentially getting towards, is that we're in this mass consumption age with a biology that's actually suited to 50,000 years ago, pre-agricultural kind of age, and we're just bombarding it with sugar and carbs, and then we're seeing all sorts of things going wrong. So it's interesting that you say that.
I wrote a piece about it, and also our doctors, because I work with a lot of doctors in the Stichting, in our foundation. There are two ways of you have pathologic insulin resistance and you have physiologic insulin resistance. And I see that in myself. All the people on low carb with diabetes, they all have a high morning glucose. They call it dawn phenomenon, but it goes way higher. Why? Because your muscle, because when you're ketogenic, your ketogenic diet creates an insulin resistance in your muscle, because they say, I don't want this sugar, I want fat, and this sugar, it's for the brain. That's what you told me. That it was like what you told me. It's a physiological. It protected us in times of famine.
And we're just importing this biology that's suited to this 50,000 year ago life into the modern world with supermarkets and Netflix and Domino's pizza deliveries. It's just, that's why it's such a strain on the body to adapt to it. And so in terms of
I shall give you one anecdote. We have our reptilian brain. Our brain from paleo time, we should preserve energy. So energy was expensive. So when you were hunting and you could sit down, you would sit down. If you could find honey, even if the bees stick you half dead, you would eat that honey because it was energy. So our brain is trained to sit and to eat sugar. Now we had the food industry, they say, okay, now we can completely satisfy our reptilian brain to sit and eat sugar. That's what we did. We are now sitting all day, eating sugar all day, and even getting fat is a protective mechanism. Getting fat protects you from getting diabetes. You see this now, and it's also a very nice anecdote. You see in the Polynesian islands, you saw those people had to hop from island to island. So they had to row for 30, 50, and sometimes they didn't. So who would survive? Were the fat ones. So they had a natural selection of people who had a little bit fat. They could survive the starvation. So now these islands, they have with the Bikini Island, they had to change their diet to American diet. 60% of those people have diabetes. Everybody gets a feet cut off there. They are all, because they are already pre-possessed to get fat and to get diabetes. And now you see they get those food. And you look at the work of, how's it called, the dentist, Weston A. Price. And look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny how that would be a selective advantage in the environment before, and now it's turned into something. And you can see these ApoE, gene is influencing this. That if you have a certain variation of this ApoE gene, you're more prone to get Alzheimer's and also all kinds of metabolic dysfunctions. So all the things that were selective advantages in the kind of prehistoric age are becoming pressures on the system in the kind of current climate that we're living in. And I think I think a big part of that is like you said, you went through so many things that were like triggering this for you, because you had the stress, because you were a army veteran, you were fighting in a war, which, I mean, if anything could bring on these kind of conditions, is that level of stress. And then on top of that, you had this exposure to the Western diet and this kind of like sugar filled things, and you also had other sources of stress in your life. So you can see how all these things can combine to cause. Do you see the stress plus the diet was the kind of factor for you in having this?
Yeah, stress,
Yeah,
the seeking,
yeah,
also a genetic deposition.
yeah,
So you have something. I
yeah,
think my genes, they load the pistol, and my lifestyle
yeah,
shoot the gun.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
And I think stress for me, and I see it now with this CGM, you can see very easy. And
yeah,
I am very sensitive to stress. My sugar goes right away very high
yeah,
when I have stress. There are
yeah,
other people who don't get a high blood sugar on stress.
yeah,
That's how you can cope with the stress, coping mechanisms.
yeah,
You can see people, they drive a car and they sit around. And when I drive a car, I say, hey,
yeah,
you, and
yeah,
how do
yeah,
you cope? And yeah,
yeah,
and when
absolutely.
you were in a war, you PTSS means post-traumatic stress disorder. So you
Yeah,
have a disorder in your stress,
yeah,
and then you start making the wrong choices of your stress. And I think stress is a killer.
yeah,
Stress also makes people smoke, makes people drink.
yeah.
Oh, I have a lot of stress. Give me a drink. But Matt, anyway, did you have the bipolar 1 or 2?
Oh, I'm bipolar 1, and I can tell you a little about my psychotic break when I was 19. I'm staying up late in college, smoking marijuana, drinking, and it was just like a perfect storm. I was hospitalized and I had delusions, and it was very spiritual, and I was not sleeping, and I was medicated, forced in the hospital, forced medication. It was a very typical, and I had 3 more progressive episodes after that, and I was hospitalized for each of them, and I was forced medication for each of them. So, not unlike your story.
Yeah, and also there was marijuana in it,
Mm.
and there was some spiritual.
Oh,
What?
absolutely. The delusions of spirituality and enlightenment and all these concepts kind of floating around.
Yeah, but
And I've talked to a lot of people who are bipolar 1 and even bipolar 2 in general. The spiritual component seems to be like almost ubiquitous in the
yeah.
psychotic experience, like a lot of
Why?
it. So the
Why?
spiritual experience, I don't know. It seems to be very common in my
Yeah, I had the
other
same.
people I've talked to. Yeah.
But now with Sufism, it falls in its place. And
Mm,
I can remember everything.
mm,
I
So I mean,
remember
yeah,
everything. And yeah, the spiritual, we see it every time. Why? I don't understand this. And I never lost my spirituality, because with my foundation, we heal people. We are healers in a way, but in a scientific way. But yeah, and I think, especially young people, I think you have this spiritual gift. You have to learn to handle it. You have to know where are you going too far. Where is the line between reality and that's, I think you have to learn. It's a training you have to learn. And yeah, I don't think wheat will help. It makes
yeah.
it gives us 10% extra that
It is really interesting because when you have bipolar, like I guess what people don't see about it is that the depression is so severe sometimes that it really drives you to kind of let go of a lot of the things people normally care about in life. Like you kind of lose interest in a lot of the more like materialistic things, you're looking for something like you want to understand your own suffering because you're like, why would I go through this? Like, what would be the meaning of this? And when I'm talking to people on forums, they always say this. It's like, it's almost like so bad that it has to be meaningful. Like, you know, it's almost so bad that there must be some reason this would be a possibility in the world that we live in to feel that bad. And so it drives a lot of people with bipolar, both through the depression and the hypomania mania, to look for spiritual answers to what's going on. Was it the...
But did you have depressions also, Matt?
You know, it's funny. Mine were not as severe as for sure as Ian's. I did have some, and I was hospitalized for one about a year ago. But it mostly just hardcore manias, but definitely not the depression that some of the bipolar 2s would get. I got some, and it was terrible.
Yeah, I see. You higher you go, how deeper you, how higher the high, how deeper the low. That's and I think also you are living on energy. You have to pay that energy back. I had the depressions. I just hated myself. That for me, the depression was you're living with a guy who you hate yourself, and you're stuck with this guy you don't like. It's the depression, the manic is just it's severe for the others, for the people around you. But for yourself, it's great, it's nice, it's fun, more or less.
Do you think that's why like so many bipolar people are artistic and creative, is because they're it's like the normal range of like human kind of experiences, like, or emotion is like here, and they're you know, way out here, and they're trying to communicate what that's like? Do you think that's what it is, or like that kind of creativity association?
But I think there's something there's a basic of truth in it, and if you have to I think there are also cultures where people like us were, they become medicine man, or they become because everything in our life has to be normal. As soon as you're not normal, you're a busy child, you get Ritalin. I don't believe in it anymore. I had okay, you cannot focus. You might take 2 years more, but don't give children Ritalin anymore. Just take them as they are.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like how you just pathologize a certain way. You know, it's like you put a bunch of kids in a classroom with very little stimulation and ability to move around, and then you tell them there's something wrong with them if they want to get up and run around and do something. And it's again, it's another with ADHD. There's a lot of people that are just very active people that want to explore the world, and they get diagnosed with something. And I'm totally in favor of medication as a way to stabilize people and to help them. And I follow the ketogenic diet, but I also totally see the value of, you know, stabilizing people with the medication, because sometimes they act on the same mechanisms. But I totally see what you mean. That mindset has been applied to every mental health condition. Is like, it's a neurochemical imbalance, so we need to give them chemicals to readdress it, which is not what you're describing. You're describing a metabolic imbalance and something that's to do with your energy levels in your brain, as opposed to like the chemicals specifically. Do you think there's a different approach we can take to treating this that is more metabolic, that could be developed beyond even just diet, but like developing metabolic therapies based on mitochondrial function and glucose metabolism?
Yeah, I think the therapy, it might be a forced therapy, like take people, you have to take you, but then don't put them right away on drugs, but put them on a diet, put them in, give them a metabolic treatment and not a chemical treatment. So, okay, take them out if they are dangerous for themselves, but don't put them in a gummy room, put them in a forest. And give them a little bit a human treatment. I think what we are doing now, closing people what they with me 24 hours light in the room with no clothes, nothing. It's inhuman. What I experienced there, this was, you don't treat an animal like that. Closing people in a separation, I think, that should be but it's easier to put somebody on a pill and in a separation, because otherwise it takes a lot of it takes a lot of doctors help. They need more assistance with a pill.
Yeah.
Put them, give them a pill and put them at home.
Yeah.
And next patient.
Yeah.
And because a lot of metabolic disease, they get a lot of patients, so they don't have the time to give the people the treatment they need.
Yeah.
So if we get half of them with good diet and so that they don't get sick, then the people who really are sick can get the best treatment there is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just remarkable, your story, because you went through all the worst things about the modern world, which is war, the bad diet, the stressful life situations. You know, you went through like everything through the mill, and yet you came out of it as a successful entrepreneur, someone who's helping
but
loads of
also
people. You know,
in the bad situations, I had also my businesses.
Yeah.
I earned a lot of money also in between, but that was just a hunt.
Yeah.
I had my businesses. I was very successful also but it was a wave, you know, going up, going down, going up. Yeah. And now the sea is calmer.
And it's awesome talking to you guys about this, because I see us as like these kind of survivors of this like Titanic ship that was, we're some of the people that just got on the life raft of like getting away from this thing. But the whole mental health thing is getting worse, and it's increasing in numbers. And I really see the only reason that this happened for you is because of your intellect, and you're able to apply it and discover about mitochondria and insulin resistance. And with Matt, because of his discipline and being someone who goes to the gym and exercises and does sports, like those are unusual features, because most people I see with bipolar and speak to aren't like you guys. They're really struggling and they're really in a bad place, and you're just trying to like help them get through the basic stuff of life, whereas you guys are like doing amazing and remarkable things. So
But
I guess,
how did you get to Dr. Palmer, Matt?
Through my mom. My mom reached out and found him, and then he and I spoke, and we met a big call with my psychiatrist, a dietitian, and Dr. Palmer to figure out the diet. Everyone's on the same page, and all the logistics, and taking salt and everything. But yeah, he's invaluable resource for me. I mean, it's changed everything.
Yeah, so now we see not a young guy who got the right doctor and the right treatment. So now for example, we are rogue, a little bit older and had to find it, but you now got help. If not, that you would have a life of 10, 20 years before you might find this, and it might now help you for the rest of your life.
Well, Wim, I have to tell you, I cut my antipsychotic medication down by 80%, and I was able to go these 6 months stable, my Zyprexa medication. I mean, it was unbelievable. I could not believe it. Make it through March, which is the equinox, is like the manic season for me, on 5 milligrams of Zyprexa and just going through like this, like it's unheard of.
Yeah. And when you had those full doses, how did you feel?
When I was on 20, 25, it was not pleasant. I mean, I think like I was so psychotic, I think it was necessary, maybe for a brief period of time. But now that I'm on a low dose, life is so much better. Like I'm lucid. I can think clearly. I don't have this brain fog from this antipsychotic medication. Life is much better.
And because with this antipsychotic, it's like your brain is in a cave. You really, it's keeping your brain, all the creativity. It had the side effects of this.
I do think it was necessary. I think it was a necessary evil for a period of time. I think it was a necessary evil. Now it's not necessary. At least that insanely high dose is not necessary. I don't have to take that. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. And I'm very grateful that you found a doctor, and that I hope that Dr. Palmer, that his work will be, I will make myself strong to find people in Holland who will do the same. And I think we will find them. I'm sure. And working, because you're starting now, you are going to on a pilot now, starting a pilot in Edinburgh or in.
Yeah, that's right. So we're going to study basically what happens when you put a bunch of people on a ketogenic diet and on the recommended diet in the UK with the NHS. So so soon we'll be sort of talking about this publicly and announcing what's happening, and there's some great people funding it, and we're going to talk about the whole thing. But at the moment we are sort of in the planning stages. We're getting ethical approval, and we're going to sort of do this alongside other groups at Stanford and in Australia. And we want to basically see what happens when you put people on the recommended UK government diet versus the ketogenic diet. And it will be very interesting because we're going to do MRI scans, we're going to do different types of brain imaging before and after. We're going to take blood metabolomics. We're going to do everything possible to look into how does this work and how is it benefiting people. So so these will be the first sort of studies of this kind on a large scale in bipolar, which will be really interesting. And we're going to talk about this in the podcast and try and kind of get an idea of how these the ketone levels are affecting people, and what some of the mechanisms behind it are. So it's very exciting. And so I guess I guess we see the two most important things is the studies plus also people sharing their story, and those two together will gradually, hopefully, start to shift the kind of perspective on this and help people learn about it.
Do you have funding also already for this study?
Yeah, I'm like I say, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to announce yet because we're still in ethical approval, but as soon as we we'll talk about it on the podcast, and how this is being done, and there's some amazing people getting behind this, and yeah, it's going to be very exciting to so we'll talk about this in some depth on a future episode, and get into the kind of what we could hopefully also kind of like speak to some of the people that are doing the study or running the study to try and get a perspective on, you know, how this works. But we really hope that this can start to kind of break ground scientifically, because there's so many people like yourselves talking about this online, but there's just very few scientific papers. Like there's maybe 2 or 3 case studies in bipolar, which is not totally representative of how many people are really experiencing these benefits.
Yeah, your paper you wrote was very inspiring already. Yeah, just doing this research on the platforms, and if you're doing this now internationally, or is every study apart? You want to do it joint?
Yeah, so I have to check if I'm allowed to talk about it publicly, because we're still ethical approval and getting things started. But yeah, we're hoping to kind of do as much collaboration as possible, because one of the things I'm passionate about is, you know, just going through this illness, you know, having bipolar 2, going through these depressions. You know, I was like really just like, I would do anything to get better from this. Like there's no limit. I wouldn't. So I just read every single night for like 7 or 8 years, like just because it was, for me, it was like with my wife, like I could see that she was struggling with me being bipolar. And I felt, man, like I have to do everything possible, because I don't want this to end for her in the way, and unfortunately, you know, it has been for even people from my own family, like that have had illnesses like this. And so I just read, and so that's what that paper was from, was just 8 years of every night sitting and reading to try and understand it. But hopefully now we can prove it in studies and kind of get the word out there about this.
I'm just hoping we can reach the people who want a solution, don't know how, don't know what to do, but there's a solution, a potential treatment that could work.
Yeah,
that could work. People don't know. That's the problem. People just, you know, the doctors don't tell them. The doctors don't know. No one knows. It's crazy.
Definitely, it's tragic. You know, like I speak to people all the time on Reddit, and these guys that meet up in Edinburgh that are just like, their lives are just in absolute chaos, and it's so, you feel like, oh man, like this could be so different for you if you could have the support of your psychiatrist and exploring some of these ideas. But they can't. Like they go and they ask and they get turned down, and they say that diet, there's no way a diet's going to work for this. I think just one of the really cool things about this is seeing that, like, how many people are passionate about it and want to collaborate on this, and just whatever we need to do, let's figure this out, let's get it out to people. And so I'm really hoping that we'll have a mass like amount of people working on this and collaborating and making it like public knowledge, because it could take 10 years or 20 years, but we could make it like 5 or 6.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And everything changed for me when I got the sleep, diet, and exercise. I like to think of it as the 3 things that the glue that hold the entire recovery together for me. And I take medication and meditate, I do other things, but when I keep the sleep, diet, and exercise good, everything, my mood is stable. It's remarkable.
Yeah, I think as soon as you stop sleeping, you should visit your doctor right away. I think that's the best indication. And also that when you told me in your video about the lithium, who is working on your circadian clock, and then because at that one I didn't know.
Yeah.
And then I say, wow, that lithium works on your circadian clock. And I'm so sure that 90%, 95% of what you're saying there is true. I'm experienced myself, everything I studied, everything. You see also, who's this? There's this psychiatrist. There are two ladies in America.
Cynthia Calkin, maybe.
No. Who do a lot of podcast? One with, I will look the names. Two psychiatrists who are doing and nog what? Brogan.
Okay.
There are two of them in America who is also doing this and I think also you might try to involve companies like Virta Health. Virta Health, they know how to put people on ketogenic diets. So they have a lot of knowledge about coaching, putting people on. And there was this, you had this guy from cancer research, Lou Cantley.
Yeah.
Because he is now developing kind of foods and diets and supplements for keto. They want to do it for cancer as well.
Yeah.
Maybe he can help you. I think you should try to contact them.
Yeah, definitely. And we should look for ways that we can, work together. You're doing this in Holland, and we should find ways that we can support what you're doing and spread word about it. Do you want to tell people where they can find your website for the low carb approaches, and what's the best place to find you online to get involved?
Yeah, we have the Stichting Je Leeft Zelfs Medicijn. Yeah. And I'm also now involved with a tech startup who is doing, it's like a Virta Health. It's called Ancora Health, Ancora.health, and there's an English website as well, because my website is completely in Dutch. It's Je Leeft Zelfs Medicijn, or you look at my name, Wim Tilburgs. But at Ancora Health, there is you find an English, but it's not about that's my website. It's all in Dutch. But Ancora Health is a tech startup where we are developing now a lifestyle program for diabetes. But also we do coaching, and we do passports with genetics. We do blood, all kinds of blood tests, and then we see how is your status. You get a health passport, and then we see all the vitamins, the minerals, your genes, and they start lifestyle programs based on those bioinformatics. It's a bioinformatics company with lifestyle coaching.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. And Wim was showing me some of the results of, your blood sugars plummeting, insulin plummeting. It's amazing what you're doing for people to help them get healthy.
I will send you some of the slides if you want for the show notes.
We'll put links in the description to all the websites and places where they can find you. And I want to be respectful of your time, because I know it's you're probably keeping your circadian rhythm locked in here, and we don't want to. I think it's but yeah, thank you so much for speaking to us today. It's totally
thank
inspiring.
you, Wim. It was great to hear your story.
Awesome. Hope to talk to you again, and have a nice day, and put them on. Huh?
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll speak many more times in the future. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Great to speak to you.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.